Check 1 2. Okay, yeah, so we're back. So to get a little tea real quick, sit on my stomach, get something in my mouth because man's we're getting real parched. Like a lemon ginger tea, you know? So yes, okay. Tapping back into Dune real quick. Shoot, I forgot. I just forgot where I wanted to take it. Yeah, I don't know. It's really just like, okay, so where I like other parts that I connect to deeply with it is the spice aspect, obviously the psychedelic aspect. And I know from like little research that Frank Herbert was into shrooms, was into magic mushrooms and psychedelics and shit like that. I think that had some part to do with the spice. And like there's so many parallels, What I even tell people when people ask me about my shrooms experiences is that like I'll tell them that shrooms unlocked higher levels of consciousness for me. I'm like, what the fuck does that even mean? But what it did is like it carved a path, right, to these higher levels of consciousness, like a straight shot, shortcut right to it. Figuratively, I'm speaking. It was a shortcut right to it, to these higher levels of consciousness, so that I could now observe, I could be the witness, I was able to dissolve my ego, break it down, build it back up to serve me instead of constantly being a slave to it, which I feel like what a lot of people are suffering from right now, the mask of ego. But we'll stick a pin in that. We'll get to that later. So it figuratively created a shortcut, carved a shortcut path for me to reach these higher levels of consciousness so that I'm able to reach them while not on psychedelics. Since once the path is there, it's there, And so I've been able to reach that same level of whatever the psychedelic feeling is, that experience, not fully, not in like shit moving and shit like that, but in terms of my mental being, my mental resolve to witness and my awareness. That's what it did. It carved that path so that I can reach that state at any time. And I have since then. Through meditation, I've been able to reach those states, that feeling, what I call that innate knowing of. It's hard to describe it as a feeling, but like that's the only, using our words, that's the only thing I have. It really is an innate knowing. That's the best way I can describe it. And so I say that figuratively, but literally what I've learned through my studies is that it does rewire your brain. There's a podcast I watched and listened to from Dr. Andrew Huberman talking about psychedelics and the studies that he has seen and looked at, has shown that when you do a heroic dose, being 5 grams or more, within close proximity with each other, so within 2 weeks, which was the case for me, that you literally rewire your brain, and the brain scans show this. So that figurative path that I'm talking about is also a literal path too. In my brain, neurologically, there were new synapses and neurons formed by this. So that path isn't just figurative, it is literal in my brain, so that I can actually get there through these synapses to reach these neurons on my own, without shrooms itself, without having to tap into it each time. And so that's what I tell people. It's medicine, right? And it's not to be abused, not to be used all the time. Like, I haven't done a heroic dose since then, and that was like 2 or 3 years ago maybe. My micro dose, but like not a heroic dose. I haven't needed to. I haven't felt the urge to. It's been awesome since then. And so correlating that to the spice, that's the same thing the spice does. Oh, wasp, get out of here. I don't know how to talk to wasps yet. So yeah, correlating back to the spice, like that's literally what the spice did to Paul, is like open his stream of consciousness so that he can see the myriad of paths and the wild threads of history. It's a quote from the game, but Yeah, like if that's the literal aspect of what it did for him, that's what I see. I see the similarities, you know. And Spice does more. Like there's the geriatric properties, so that they live longer and all that kind of stuff. And you know, more so the consciousness aspect is where I relate to, and how this stuff like really does open us up. And that doesn't just mean shrooms. It could be hold on. I don't know how this affects the recording, but it could be more than that. I forgot what I was saying. Damn. But yeah, that's another relatable point for me when it comes to Dune. Like that universe is just so like, it's so dope. And like the other aspects too, man, like the human computation part, you know, the mentats, like I think that's so cool. After the Butlerian Jihad, you know, the rules that came after that of like man will not make machine with the light in the likeness of man, or the mind, something like that. I'm butchering that. It's terrible. But basically what was happening in the Butlerian, well, what was happening then that caused the Butlerian Jihad was, it wasn't an AI war, which is what Frank Herbert's son moves into. I think the original idea that Frank Herbert had, and he mentions this in Dune 1, like it's there, is that man was using AI to manipulate other men. So it wasn't like AI is fighting man, it was men were fighting men but using AI to do it, you know, and that caused the Butlerian Jihad. And so moving away from technology in that aspect forced the different talents that humans had, forced evolution for humans. So that's where the schools, the Suk Doctor schools, the Bene Gesserit school, the Mentat school, forcing humans to use their own brains to deliver these computations and shit. That's what I fucking love about it. Like that's what, to me, that's like more of like the Star Trek aspect of them just working towards the betterment of humanity, you know. Like I see that aspect in that, like they're using their own mental faculty to exist in this future world, you know. And it's so amazing to think about. Again, I was a huge sci-fi kid, so like, again, I wonder what my outlook would have been if I was introduced to this early on, you know. But because I grew up with Star Trek and Star Wars and like the super high tech future where we're in unison with technology, you know, as opposed to Dune, which is like adverse to technology, using what we have now in the future. Like I don't know if I could compute that. I don't know if I could compute that as a kid, you know, especially with what the depictions of the future were around me, which is still instilled in me today. Like I love technology, and it's funny that I think about that as I want to take these out, because I don't like the aspect of the electromagnetic Bluetooth, whatever it is, like in my brain, you know. Like I don't like that idea and aspect, and I do need to do more research in that to actually see like what is going on there. But like the idea of that alarms me, but at the same time I'm so rooted in technology to the point where that, like as a kid, my older brother is 5 years older than me, but like we always loved seeing the depiction of the future in like the TV shows and the movies that we watched. From like, I think it was Fifth Element, we loved that movie, and like the video call on that, like we wanted that so bad. I remember when there were like phones that would come out with video calling and shit, and it was like, holy shit, yo, we're really coming to the future. To now, like we have that, you know. It's so like it's so abundant now, and like I love that aspect. And I remember as a kid I always wanted to have what we have now, these devices that allow us to access the world's collective knowledge, you know, or at least what they'll allow us to have. But having access to that at my fingertips, to if there's anything I don't know, I can just boom, look it up right away, and boom, now I know it, as opposed to having to go to the library, busting up the Dewey Decimal System to find one piece of information in this book that I have to go, now I gotta search the index of that book to find the one thing I'm looking for, and boom, 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 you know. Long process, but doable, and I did it. But now to be here where I can just, okay, what is it? I can now just like ask something and boom, it tells me. And then from there, I don't just listen to that. I do more research. I cite the sources. I go deeper in that, and that's a whole nother thing. But to have that aspect, to at least to point me in the right direction so I can continue learning and build my own kind of ideas and theories around it based off of what I'm given. That's something I've always wanted as a kid, and now I have that. So there's a weird duality in me that like a big part of me loves nature and being free and disconnected from all this shit. And like I have days where I don't touch my phone at all. I don't communicate with anybody. Like I just chill, I just be still. And then the other parts of me that like I utilize technology in the way that is beneficial to me so that I can continue to learn. And like my studies over the past decade into spirituality, mindfulness, wellness, conspiracy theories, aliens, extraterrestrials, spirit guides, soul groups, like all of this stuff is done through technology. It allowed me to stay at home, a place where I'm comfortable, and learn this shit. Excuse me. And so like that's something that I really do appreciate. So yeah, it's weird duality because I go back and forth. Like I do appreciate it when it's used, I want to say correctly, but yeah, maybe correctly, or just to our benefit as opposed to our detriment. Detriment being the laziness. How something I do notice and I see is that how our communication is falling to the wayside because of technology, whereas it's something that is dope conceptually. I can contact somebody on the other side of the planet right now if I want to, in China or wherever the exact, I don't know where that is around the world, halfway around the world, but I'm able to communicate with somebody there. I don't, but it's a cool idea, notion to know that I can. And like, yeah, so like that's awesome, but the detriment is where I see us using shortcuts. So one, like texting is again great. I used to love text. I used to be a big texter because I could like, back in my Gallus days, like I like, talk to more than one gal at one time, plus do stuff around the house and like keep conversations going and blah blah blah. It's my pace. It's not like one-on-one where you're on the phone and it's okay, you're giving that person that attention and energy, or in person, or it's the same thing. Whereas now I'm the complete adverse. I don't like texting, and I'd much rather sit face to face with you and have this combo. In fact, this is my office. I invite a lot of people here to have these conversations with me, these philosophizing conversations and shit. But like, yeah, so like the breakdown of our communication via technology is something that I'm seeing. And what I mean by that is like, an example I'll use is like, if someone goes like to a restaurant, new restaurant or something, be like, oh my gosh, restaurant is so good, you should try it. And like it's a very specific example, but let's focus on the core concept of what I'm talking about here. It's like that good that you're saying in this restaurant is super subjective. Suppose we don't know each other very well, or we know each other well, whatever it may be. I don't know what good means, to say like, yeah, this tastes so good, or that meal was so good, or that restaurant was so good. There's so much lost in that, as opposed to why the restaurant was so good, like what was good about it. It was so good because I went to Chubby's and the jerk chicken was like perfect. It was spicy, but not too spicy, and I could taste the pimento, I could taste the smokiness of it, and the oxtail wasn't too salty, like so using words to articulate exactly how we're feeling. So now, as the person receiving these words, I can now understand, okay, the jerk chicken is a bit spicy, I don't like spice, so maybe I won't have the jerk chicken. But if the oxtail is savory, I might like that a bit more. If it's not too salty, again, understanding what that gauge is, we have no idea. But at least I now have a better understanding that, okay, I can stay away from this and move towards this, because you were articulating in your description of what was good about this whole thing. And so like, when I have conversations with people, it hurts to have the surface level conversation because it's a lot of that. It's, oh, how are you? I'm good. What does that mean? Like, what is good? And so, like, that's where I see the communication breakdown. I call it just the laziness. We get lazy because of our constant communication through text. Context is lost through text communication. The inflections in our voice, our cadence, our body language, there's so much that is there that is lost throughout our communication. That on top of the laziness that we have, the shortcuts that we take in the combos. So I see that as the detriment of this technology that we have, where it's meant to connect us and meant to make us appreciate one another more, but when it isn't used correctly, and I don't know if that's the right term, or if it isn't used to our benefit, I think that's where the detriment is, I think that breakdown of communication, it's not solely on text communication and shit like that. I think that's just a part of it. Everything's a spectrum, everything's a part of each other. But I think that is something that is like a snowball effect. I think that snowball is now like a fucking massive Indiana Jones type ball that's rolling down the hill. It's just been collecting and building and building. Again, to our detriment. So yeah, I'm not trying to get on a whole tangent on the pitfalls of technology, although that can be a whole thing. But there was some other things that I put pins in that I forgot now that I might need to go and listen to. Just think, oh, I remember one. One was I was going to talk about the fears that I had quelled recently. But hold on, before I do that, I want to put a cap on the Dune part. So that whole side of things was like just my appreciation for like the mentat aspect, or the natural human progression aspect of the Dune universe. I love that part, man. That part is so fucking dope to me. There's still a lot of questions, like what is the technology? Love that, but for a lot of this stuff, a lot of these sci-fi stories and universes, I kind of have to like just X that out of my mind, because it will make me, I'll intellectualize it too much, and then it will make me not like it. Like Star Wars. Like, how does any technology work in Star Wars? Huh? But if I start thinking about it, then I lose myself. So it's like, all right, fuck it. Just take it for what it is. And that's one of the reasons why The Expanse universe, books, TV show, is my favorite, like, of all time. Because of how James S. A. Corey, Ty Frank, and Daniel Abraham, how they depict science, how they depict gravity, how they depict like space travel. Like, it's all rooted in real science that I fucking love and appreciate. It's the only thing in sci-fi that I've seen that depicts it in that way, as true as possible. Maybe there's other pieces, other ones that I'm forgetting right now, but from what I've seen, that one is like so accurate, so amazing. And so yeah, that's why that's one of my favorites, because I appreciate the rootedness in reality that a lot of other sci-fi is just not, they don't have, which also is there's merit to that too. Like, I do love the aspect of escaping and going somewhere completely different and having to use parts of my brain that I wouldn't normally. Like, that's one of the reasons I fucking love sci-fi, is the moral conundrums that they put us in. The paradoxes that we're faced with in some of these things, some of these stories. Like, one of my favorites that I use all the time is Star Trek Voyager. My favorite Star Trek. Love Captain Janeway. She's so fucking dope. My favorite captain. Actually, I don't know. Her or Jean-Luc Picard might be my favorite. I'm not sure. Actually, I don't know. It might be Janeway. She was just so like... She was so communicative, man. She communicated everything. She relied on her crew. She relied on like the best parts of her crew. She was great at disseminating information. She was great at relying on other people's strengths. and bowing to their wisdom and knowledge in certain areas. Whereas Jean-Luc was like pretty hard-headed, pretty stubborn, like if he said something, like that was it. He would open up a little bit to like the people he trusted, but it took a while for them to get there. Like, and if he knew he could rely on you, like Data, he loved relying on Data because he knew like computationally, boom, like he was gonna have it. So he put a lot of faith in what he knew, I think. Whereas Janeway put a lot of faith in people and like giving them the room to show up for her. So yeah, I think it might be Janeway, as my favorite. I need to rewatch both of those. They're calling me, but I have a long list of things I need to rewatch. But anyway, shit, I forgot where I was going with this. Goddamn. Oh yeah, I was talking about one of the paradox conundrums. Okay, so I forgot what episode it was called, but with the character Tuvix. So Tuvok, who's a Vulcan, who's a very stoic individual, suppresses their emotions, so he's very just stoic. Goes on a mission with Neelix, who's the exact opposite of him. He's super flamboyant and extrovert and loud and like very personable and charismatic, lovable guy. And so them two have to go down to a planet, and so they go down and gather some plants and stuff, and they come back up. When they beam back up, something happens, and they get fused together, and they become one being called Tuvix, who's like both of them in one. Looks like both of them, acts like both of them. He's like at the same time stoic, but also can express himself very well, express himself very lovely. And so it's interesting because both of these characters separately have lives of their own. Neelix was an alien that they were introduced to when they got slingshotted and beamed 60 or 70 light years away. He was one of the first aliens that they've never seen before. They didn't know anything about Talaxians. And he was just such a super nice guy that he offered to like help guide them on their way back. And so like since his the years he's been on the ship, he developed relationships with people on the ship. Tuvok obviously was the security officer on the ship, so he had his own life with people on the ship, but also he had a family back on Vulcan and shit, So these two individuals have their own separate lives, but in the weeks that they were fused together, and Janeway and the science team are trying to figure out what's going on and how they can reverse it, Tuvix now has developed friendships, relationships, memories with people on the ship. So after a few weeks, they figure out how to separate the two. Now Janeway is in a extreme moral conundrum because she has to explain to Tuvix that all right, what do you want to do here? Do you want to go back or do you want to stay? I don't know if she asked. I might be paraphrasing it wrong, but I remember Tuvix saying he wanted to stay Tuvix. He didn't want to be Tuvok and Neelix again. So Janeway now has this fucking moral conundrum of what the hell do I do now? This is a position that none of us will ever be in, but it's so interesting to think of what would we do? What could we do? Ultimately, she decided, spoiler alert again, that she had a responsibility to her crew, Tuvok and Neelix being a part of that crew, and the people that care about them, she had to separate them. She made the executive decision to separate them against the will of Tuvix, which is it's fucked, It's moral ambiguity. Damn, nope, that's not it. Ambiguity. There it is. Whew. All right, got that. There's moral ambiguity there of what's right and what's wrong, but she had to make that decision to do that. There is it's hard to say what was right and what's wrong, but again, looking at it from a captain's perspective, it makes sense what she did and why she did it. So yeah, that's just an example of why I love that shit, because we'll never experience it, but it's fun to think about what would we do, and I would love to have combos with people about what would you do, and it's so that's just another reason why I love sci-fi, because it allows us to think so far outside of our norm, so far outside of our boxes, our compartmentalization that humans need. We all compartmentalize. It's something that is a necessity for our minds, for us to understand the world. If we can put something in a box, that's our understanding, you know? Again, I think there can be detriment to that when we lump things together that should not be lumped together. You know, there's so many varying examples of that. One example I love is love. You know, I think love is a catch-all word that we as humans barely scratch the surface on understanding. Barely, you know. It's such a powerful thing, but like the concept of like love at first sight, or like loving someone quickly. It's like, how could you love her? You barely know them, you know? And it's like, I don't know. Okay, that's a whole other thing. I might save that topic because I do have a whole lecture on that. But I want to stay with this. I remember where I was at. It was Dune, and it was the love of sci-fi. Because of the moral conundrums. Yeah. For the escape. The reality escape. So yeah, man. That's, so the human evolution part is why I love that aspect of Dune. And the moral conundrums that sci-fi as a whole gives us. Yeah. It's dope, man. Oh yes, okay, so the fear shit. So this part isn't really connected with Dune or anything, or any sci-fi shit. It's really just like parts of me, you know. It stemmed from shit, man. I don't know. If I talk about this, I have to get real vulnerable. I don't know if I want to do that just yet on this public forum, even though like it's not gonna get no views. Like 8-10 people might watch this shit. So I don't know. Shit. I did rid myself of some fears, but you know, I don't know what that was relating to. So maybe I'll just allow that. Shoot, but there was others. I really should have written it down of like what I was supposed to come back to. But you know what? Whatever, man. It's mental freestyling, you know? So whatever comes up, let's just rock with it. Oh, almost 3. That's crazy. Okay, fine. I think I'll talk about it. Fuck. Whatever. I don't know. Fuck. Overthinking. You are Paul Muad'Dib. But one thing I will touch on, we'll just go here and see if I come back. But yeah, oh, this is a great thing. I don't even know what to call this, but like, this has been in my awareness for a minute, you know. And it's the idea that like, so much of my life, so much of the things that are happening to me now, opportunities are coming my way, my thought processes, the paths that I see, Regin. I didn't realize that so many of them were things that I wanted when I was younger, as a child, as a kid, as a teen, and are coming to fruition now. But they just look different. It's the same concept, it just looks not like I envisioned it to be, or wanted it to be. So, prime example of this, and what gave me this whole idea, and then I started to roll back into my memory and my awareness and start to see like, oh shit, I was putting so many other pieces together. It was after my yoga training. So I did my yoga training end of last year, end of 2024 in November. On the way to Costa Rica, went to my yoga house, super dope experience, and it was great. And oh man, like being there was so awesome. Like the learning, how we learned was so dope. I love just sitting in the shala, talking about philosophy, just sitting in a group together. No notes, just talking, you know? And like you take notes if you want, but like just having conversation. And like that resonated with me so deeply to the point where I'm like, I need to do this more. Like there needs to be, I don't know where this happens, but I need to understand, I need to do this more. Then I learned about satsangs and all that. I got into Muji a bit more because he does a lot of satsangs, and like that shit is so dope. And my teacher, one of my yoga teachers, Pradeep, would tell us that like that's how India was like coming up. Like they didn't do a lot of written text. They just would have satsangs and they would just sit and talk, and that's how the information was spread. Stories were spread, learning was spread that way. It's like this is like that's the way I learn, you know, kind of like I guess in a lecture form, but I don't know, it's different than a lecture because it's like conversation, talking back and forth and whatnot. And like in my mind I go to like lecture halls of like college, university and shit, which I didn't do. I did a semester in college and then left. Shoot, somebody had a sick ass term, I forgot what it was. It wasn't the term dropout. Left out or something like that. I think it was left out because like the system that we learn in, like we're left out of that system. It's not for us. That's not how we learn. It's definitely not how I learned. And like I think I reflect back on that and like I see that it's essentially the same thing. Like somebody's up there talking, but even like the dynamics of like us sitting in seats and like it going higher and like a collar, like, you know, kind of rows and shit like that. What I loved about a satsang is we're all on one level, and like I don't realize what that does to our psyche of like, even though this is the guru, even though this is the teacher, he's on our level, they're on our level, you know, they're talking to us about things, but they're up here. And sometimes in lecture halls and schools and stuff, the teacher is down there and we're up here. So I don't know if it's meant to flip that kind of ideology, but I don't know. And also like indoors in the fluorescent light and all that kind of stuff. I'm just like thinking back on like what was the difference between my college experience and this experience at my yoga training. And there's a lot of probably little factors, you know, that go into it. Like I'm in a tropical paradise. I'm in fucking Costa Rica. We're in a shala. I'm learning about things that I'm interested in and eager to learn about with other like-minded people. I have a good understanding of my energy and vibration and other people's energy and vibration and frequency and all that. And like it's like there's, and like obviously, you know, I'm at a retreat, so like I'm not worrying about food, I'm not worrying about washing dishes or grocery shopping or laundry or anything like that. You know, all these aspects, these factors go into that my whole transformation out there and like the process and all that kind of stuff, you know. But definitely I need to, you know, it's marked for further study. Definitely need to do further study on that to see like what it was. I reached new levels of my meditation, but also new levels of equanimity out there as well. And well, what I also found is that like I was able to step further into myself out there, more so than I am here in Toronto. Oh, and that sparks a whole nother conversation about alignment. Okay, I'll get into that after. But oh man, I forgot where we were before. About learning in the satsang. things look different when I was a kid. Okay, so when I was younger, I grew up on Dragon Ball Z, the anime. Fucking loved that show. Loved how they could, Saiyans specifically, would get stronger every time they fight. So even though like they get beat up, when they recover, they're stronger than they were before. And so like Vegeta and Goku like feed off of each other, you know? The more they battle, the more they fight, the stronger they get. And so I love the idea of the hyperbolic time chamber. So there, when they would step into that, it's like a second here is like a year in there. I forgot what the exact ratio is, but it's similar to that, you know? So if you're in there for like 10 seconds, you're in there for like 10 years or some shit like that. Maybe not, might not be seconds, but it might be a minute, whatever. So like they would go when they knew like an enemy was coming, or like they just needed to get stronger, they would go to the hyperbolic time chamber, and there was unlimited food, like you could sleep, rest, whatever. You could go there and just train. So they would spend the equivalent of years in there just training. I remember Goku and Gohan would go in there, Vegeta and Goku would go in there, and I'd always be like, fuck man, I would love that. I wish I had a hyperbolic time chamber I could just go into and like train and get stronger and come back and like, yeah, like that's it. Like I saw their life as so simple, right? The enemy comes, you fight them, that's it. Boom, you beat them, they're gone. As opposed to like our lives here, there's so much nuance, and people and work and jobs and money and fucking crazy systems and all that kind of shit. So like it was such a simple view of like fight, get stronger, done. So I wanted that, at least a fraction of that. And so I always wanted a hyperbolic time chamber. And it wasn't until after my yoga training that I literally realized that that's what that was. My yoga training was 3 weeks, 21 days, in a shala, in the jungle, steps away from the beach. And again, like bare food, healthy food, farm to table, vegan options, learning about stuff that is great for my mental. It wasn't until I came back that I was like, oh shit, that was my hyperbolic time chamber. And I was out there, I deleted Instagram, wasn't on my phone, too tough. So like the world stood still in my mind, you know, because I wasn't checking in every 2 seconds. Like I had no idea what was going on at home. So it's like, yeah, the world literally did stand still, and I got to unplug. And so that was my hyperbolic time chamber. It just looked different than this floating thing in the sky that stops time, and I can go there and get stronger and have like whatever I want food-wise and all that kind of shit, you know? It just looked different, but it was essentially the same thing. The core concept was the same thing. I got to remove myself from existence and reality and go somewhere and train my mind and my body at the same time, because my yoga training is not big into yoga. I maybe did 3 classes by ones that my friends were doing because they just became yoga teachers, so I went to go and support them. And so I would go and learn, and then I would do like 10 to 15 minutes of yoga off YouTube, you know? Even those were few and far between. Maybe like once or twice a week for like a month. I would do one week and then not do it for 2 weeks, and do it again for 2 weeks and be consecutive for 2-3 weeks, and then stop for a few months and then get back on it. Super few and far between, and only like up to 50, maybe 20 minutes is the most I did. And the first time I did an hour, it was like, what the fuck, how am I going to do an hour? Then I go do my yoga training, and we're doing 2 hours a day, every day. I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? But like, it was the illest shit ever, man. It was so dope. I was able to do it. And that's really where I learned that like yoga as a philosophy is something that I'm super about. And not only super about, but have been practicing actively through my mindfulness practice, through my meditation practice, and just my way of living. I didn't even realize that that's how I've been living throughout my entire life. The 8 limbs of the philosophy of yoga is how I've been living. Minus the asana, the 3rd limb, which I just mentioned, was new to me. So I was literally living all 7 limbs plus all 10 yamas and niyamas. I was living that throughout my life. And the asana was the last piece of the puzzle to connect all of the philosophy of yoga. When I learned that, it all fucking clicked, and all the pieces came together, and I was like, holy shit. That's why I've been feeling so calm, so at peace, so zen, so equanimic. Because I've been doing these ancient practices that are 4,000 or 5,000 years old without knowing it. And so another example I'll give you of these things that are things I always valued or wanted when I was younger, and then they came to be like, a lot of times it would be like, I'll develop a theory of like how to live or something. And then I find out years later that this is an actual real thing that's, I guess, validated or vindicated by academia or a whole strain of schooling or thought, whatever it is. But like professionals operate this way, you know, for lack of a better way to say that. A recent one was so this concept, this theory that I developed, it was really around like an ethos, you know, and it's like I spent a lot of time in the music industry, 20 years. So like 10 years as a DJ, another 10 years as like on the business side of the music industry, helping artists and shit. And so I lost my train. Oh yeah, okay. So working in that industry in Canada, there's not a lot of money in it. There's like no money in it. Ain't no money out here for that shit, for the arts. So a lot of my career was off passion, for the love. You know, I was doing it for the love. I was doing it because I enjoyed what I was doing. I was passionate about what I was doing. I loved being a part of the contribution to the music industry. I work specifically in hip-hop and R&B and black music because that's what I identify with. You know, I'm Jamaican, but I identify a lot more with hip-hop and R&B culture. I feel like that raised me more than like reggae culture, dancehall culture, or Jamaican culture, period. So like, you know, for me, it's like seeing Wu-Tang, like super deep, 9 deep, clicked up, you know, just repping where they're from, spitting bare knowledge, was resonating to me. Seeing Nas and AZ, mad fly, fresh in Adidas suits with Cuban links, waves, lineups, like that shit was so appealing to me, you know. I wanted to be a part of that, you know, the do-rags and like the style, the swag, like all of it was so fucking fly, man. And so that resonated, and like, yeah, that was important to me. But so yeah, that's like what it meant, right? So I rooted myself in the culture and that, and so me getting into music was like, how can I contribute to this culture that has like raised me, that has added so much layers and factors to my life? Because I would learn so much through their music, through all these artists, all these rappers and shit that I grew up on. Like I'd learned so much through their music, and like that's what was a part of my ethos, was realizing that I can touch bare people through these artists' music. So if I help these artists get to a certain level or help get their art out, then the shit that I love about these songs, other people will love too, and it can impact them and help them throughout their lives. I remember one day I was driving. This is a bit later in my career. When I was driving, the DMX song came on. I know DMX loves to attach prayers and shit to his music. And I remember I was crying, I was crying off of one song. I forgot what it was. I don't know if it was, I forgot what it was. But I was like, if this is touching me, this little black youth in Toronto, and this guy's in New York, so it isn't too far away, but like, where else can this go? You know, like, how much further can this fucking go? And so that's where it sat with me. It was like, yo, this can, like, I can help people. I can help people hit this feeling, get this feeling of euphoria or whatever it was that made me cry, the happiness, the gratitude, the appreciation that I was feeling. Other people can feel that too. So that's like one of the driving factors for me. And then it was like, I realized from young, it's like, hey, I want to help people. I didn't know how to do that. I was like, lawyer, doctor, the typical branches that are in front of us was in front of me, you know. But like those took a certain level of intellect that at the time I was really hard on myself, just especially based on like the school system and shit. I wasn't great in school. Again, it wasn't how I learned, so I thought those were unattainable for me because I was not the most intelligent. So I'm like, I need something that's like easy, simple to do. The time, you know, I'm talking like 10, 11, 12 years old, you know. That time I was a gymnast, sick ass motherfucking gymnast. Used to win almost every competition, first, second, and third. Just busting it up for years. 6 years I was a gymnast, competitive gymnast. So I'm like agile, right? I can do flips, I can move around. I'm small, I'm little bit, climb shit. So I'm like, I need something that's like exciting and not boring. I remember I did a co-op in high school, and it was like for a security company, and they had me like in the office, you know, to the point where I would like literally fall asleep with these guys, and they're doing whatever it is they're doing on the computer, and I would like just nod off, and like they'd have to wake me up because I'm snoring because it's so fucking boring. So I'm like, okay, can't do this shit, can't do no office shit. I need something that's like exciting. So I'm like, okay, I'll be a cop. I'm like, that's not boring, it's exciting. It's something new every day. And like I had all plans to be like a corrupt cop. You know, fucking Training Day was deep in my awareness at that point. So I was like, yeah, I'll be corrupt and all that shit, whatever. So but the basis of why I got into it is because I wanted to help people, and I wanted to help a larger amount of people rather than helping people one by one. So with that mentality, what was constantly knocking on my door was music. Again, I was a DJ during this time, and the time I had hit that kind of glass ceiling of being a DJ in Toronto at that time, it's like there's not much money here. There's not much further places this can go, either like becoming a bigger promoter, so like doing bigger events, bringing out more people, hundreds to thousands of people, maybe leveling that up to doing shows and festivals and shit like that. Or you go another route of being like a tour DJ, so you hop on with like the artist and like you travel the world and you tour and you're with them that route. Like those were some of the routes that like were available, and I was like, hey, those didn't really appeal to me too tough. So I'm like, all right, I need to like pivot. And at the time, one of the dudes that was in the sound crew that I grew up with, one of my best friends, was rapping too. He was like really dope rapper. So I'm like, all right, cool. Let me just help this guy again, like rap again. Black music, the culture, identified with, loved. He was doing it, he was sick at it too, so it's like, bet, let me just do what I can to help him get his shit out there and rock with it. So it was about helping. It was about like, how do I help? I get happiness through helping people, through helping get this dope music out, this shit that I love. We've been beside each other since we were 5 years old, so the stories he's telling are the stories that I was there for. I'm with him doing it, so it's my stories too. So it's like, okay, this is awesome. Like, I want to help get this dope art out there, and that's what I would get happiness from that fact that I'm helping not just my friend, not just my stories, but contributing to the culture. So that was something that I operated on, that I want to help people because I get gratification from helping. That was the ethos. So later on in life, like fast forward a decade or maybe two, it's recent, like just before my training, I'm watching the show Shrinking. If you haven't watched it on Apple Plus, really dope, second season. And Mia was talking with the neighbor girl, I forgot her name, the neighbor woman, and she brings up a term that I never heard before called psychological egoism. And what I understand, maybe I'm getting it wrong, I'm paraphrasing, maybe I'm getting it wrong. What I understand is like psychological egoism is, okay, I don't even know how to describe it as that way, but it's like, sorry, before I go there, how I got here was I started looking at words. I'm right now writing a course on redefining definitions. This is one of the first definitions I started to redefine. I started to look at. I was looking at service and selfishness. So like, I started to look at my career, and like I've been of service my entire career. As a DJ, I'm serving the crowd, I'm serving the people by giving them entertainment. As a promoter, it's the same thing. We're throwing events to serve people, to bring them entertainment. As an artist manager, I was doing the same thing. And later I moved into other aspects of music where I was of service. So I started to look at selfishness and being like, okay, the connotation that's been attached to selfishness has always been one of negative. That's negative. And that's just through societal evolution of the word. The inherent word is not negative, right? But when we see movies, TV shows, sometimes it's depicted like, oh my God, you didn't come to my birthday party, you're so selfish. Or, you know, it's said during a negative time, during an argument or something that somebody didn't do or whatnot. It's served with lack, you know, it's said with lack. So I started to look at that, and I started to look at the actual definition, and it's like I forgot what it is, I should pull it up, but you're recording my phone right now, so okay. Like the definition inherently is not something negative, right? So just how it's been used over time has embedded and ingrained a negative connotation to it. And so I started to look at that and be like, that's not right. You know, it's not fucking fair. And there's a couple artists. One of the artists that I worked with, City Fidelia, has a line in one of his songs that says, I have to be selfish in order to be selfless. And that always stuck with me, because it's like, yeah, that is the inherent use of the word, you know. In order to give away myself, I have to focus on myself so that I can build myself up, so that I can have space for other people. And so I saw that, and I was like, yeah, like a lot of my ethos was of service to people, because that's what brought me happiness. That was the passion. And so when in the show, when she's talking about psychological egoism and how if you find something that you love and brings you happiness, and you focus on that, and the byproduct of that is that you're helping people, or vice versa, the byproduct of you helping people is your happiness. I think it might be the other way. That is the aspect of psychological egoism, or that is psychological egoism, to be fixed on that, to be fixed on, I derive happiness from helping people, so I'm going to help people. And me being completely selfish and only thinking about my happiness is the psychological egoism. And it just so happens that how I get my happiness comes from helping other people. So when that fucking hit, bro, oh my gosh, I remember I was like 2-3 puffs into like a new spliff, and like my crown chakra was open, and I journaled it too, and I remember yelling out, see, this is what the fuck I'm talking about, because it was another instance in my life that I had developed this theory 10 years ago, and I moved throughout my entire music career in it. And it was like, I now have this vindication that this theory that I concocted when I was younger is an actual thing that academia has proven and used, you know, and me not knowing any of this shit. I'm just going with what feels right to me. And so I remember my crown chakra was open, and like I got a crazy download. I remember seeing visions of like all this shit. It's weird to describe, but it was blue, and I just remember like faces like coming at me, and like it was weird to explain, but it was really dope. And like there's so much information that came at that point. I don't know what that was. I still need to like process that, even though that was a while ago. But yeah, like that's just another super long-winded example of these things, these processes. I don't even know what to call them. I should give them a name if they don't have a name already, of like how I operate, theories I'll create, concepts I'll create, ethos that I'll inhibit, a way of life that I'll move towards, that ends up being something that is already existing. Like I'm not creating it, is basically what I'm saying. It's not coming from my mind, you know. Where I think it's actually coming from is what I call innate knowing. And my friend had called it something else. That's another thing that has a word. I forgot what it is. Not clairvoyance, but one of the clairs or one of the voyances or something like that. I forgot what it is. But it's one of those. It's something that has a name already, but I call it innate knowing, where I'm tapping into what I understand now is, for me, it's collective consciousness. It's an aspect of collective consciousness that exists within all of us. So again, what I'm coming to believe and coming to understand based off of my studies is what our consciousness is, spirit, soul, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, excuse me, we're all slivers of collective consciousness. So the way I describe it is that like quantum consciousness, source, God, the universe, higher self, wherever you use it, wherever you define it, exists in a different dimension, higher dimension. If we pull from Michio Kaku, there's 11 dimensions. So whichever one of those any one of those higher ones, it exists in. So like us, we don't have the ability to revert dimensions. We can't become two-dimensional. We can't become one-dimensional. We can't just revert back and be 2D, We can experience two dimensions through different means, like this. Like this phone, how you're watching me, you're experiencing 3 dimensions via 2 dimensions, Any picture, any video, any TV screens, phones, all these are portals, right? For us to experience 3 dimensions by way of 2 dimensions. So we can't become 2-dimensional or 1-dimensional, but we can still experience it in a different way. So God, source, higher self, universe can't revert itself back to 3 dimensions, this dimension that we exist in, 3rd density, whatever you want to call it. So it takes slivers of itself, and puts it into these bioelectric magnetic meat bodies, and it gets to experience 3 dimensions. Same way we experience 3 dimensions through 2D format, it experiences 3 dimensions maybe through 4D format. Yeah, I don't know. Never thought about that before. Anyway, So that's where the sliver portion comes from it. And since we are aspects, since we are collective consciousness is the amalgamation of experiences that we've gathered while being in this 3rd density. So when we experience, we live our life, we experience, then we die, we take all that experience, that knowledge, that data, back up to collective consciousness and adds to it. And then anyone else that comes down, the sliver gets taken off, it now has that piece of collective consciousness in it. So that's any life that has lived. Any human life. I don't know if it's just humans. Maybe it's animals too, insects too. I don't know. Maybe. I don't see why not. So all of those aspects of consciousness exist within collective consciousness, just adds to the experience of it. And so that's where I think the innate knowing comes in. So what other examples of innate knowing is like talent. I think people are talented, people have certain skills who gravitate towards something without an explanation. I think that's our collective consciousness shining through. I don't know if maybe you've seen videos of like babies, like super young infants being able to play the piano. I think that's another thing I call spiritual inertia. So like the spirit from a past life, not necessarily the most recent past life, but through collective consciousness, the spiritual inertia coming through that baby or that infant is still so strong. I developed a new theory actually, oh my gosh, about spiritual inertia and how it comes through in different ways. So like, I think it might be like specific to the body, the bioelectric magnetic chemical biological composition that is made up. Whenever that sliver of consciousness enters in that, those different levels and readings that we all have, you know, chemical levels, whatever it is, cells, all that kind of shit, I believe it may, or I theorize that it may read these levels and certain aspects depending on the past life or collective or consciousness, past consciousness, forms of familiarity. So for instance, if, like, say these babies again that can play piano or whatever, maybe that's like say for instance Bach, right, or Beethoven. The biological composition that those guys had is similar, if not exactly the same, as what is in this new baby, this infant. You know, the levels are the same, whatever it is, however we define it, however we break down the data, the composition is the same data that was in them. And so through spiritual inertia, it's familiar and it wakes back up and it sparks it up again. And that's how they're able to like play piano or whatever the fuck it is. If you have a talent, if you have a skill, if you gravitate towards a subject, a certain thing. For me, it's the cosmos, it's space, it's science. I love that shit. Was never good at science in school, but I gravitate towards it. And that could be because reinforcement of like TV shows, movies, commercials, stuff that I loved and watched, like sci-fi and shit like that, just reinforced throughout my life and whatnot. Sure, definitely open to that possibility, open to all possibilities. But I like this theory. It's fun, you know. I think it's super interesting. Spiritual inertia connecting with the chemistry that is in us now and reawakens that information that is in us. So going back to the other aspect of the things I was talking about, of like how I operate off of these things, this spiritual inertia is what I'm operating off of. That innate knowing is what I'm operating off of, because this feels good, this feels familiar. When I move back into this way of whatever it is, it feels good, it feels right. So let me I'm going to continue this because this feels right to me. And then it ends up being something that is legit, or not legit, but something that just I didn't think of. Someone else thought of it, someone else thought of it, someone else agreed, someone else did this, wrote a paper about it, boom, now it's a whole thing that is in the practice, you know, or somebody else has mentioned over here, so it's not just me. And so that is something that has been happening throughout my fucking life. And again, I'm only now connecting the dots as to how often that's happened. I can't say that every time it's happened in my younger days have I been able to connect to. Only now, only since my awakening 2-3 years ago, have I been able to go back in my life and connect the dots as like, oh shit, I remember thinking this then, now it's a thing. Another thing I want to touch on is, was it the investments? Okay, hold on. May not want to go there yet. I want to sit with this spiritual inertia and collective consciousness thing for a bit, because that's really cool, man. I really like this thought. It explains a lot too. It's like, how do we measure that? I'm sure there's ways. But like, I also see other aspects too, like playing a part too. Like channeling is something that I'm learning about now. I was just watching a video with Lee Harris yesterday. He's a new channeler I'm just getting familiar with. I've been studying Bashar for a minute now, and I fucking love Bashar and Dale Anka. Thank you, Daryl, for being the channel for Bashar. Thank you, Bashar. Resonate a lot with me. And thank you, my friend Callie, who put me onto Bashar. And so like channeling is something that I'm getting more familiar with. But now I'm starting to realize and understand that I think we all channel. We just don't know it, or we don't call it that. I think artists channel. Like when I've again worked with artists for so long, and like they'll say like, yeah, like this shit just came to me, you know. I think that is just them tapping into like other beings, other forms of consciousness, and it's flowing through them. It's coming through them in different ways. Or like what Rick Rubin says is that like we operate as antennae, which makes sense. Like our pineal gland acts as a transducer, and transducer is that thing in the radio that picks up the radio waves, the radio signals, and transduces them, changes them to be an audio frequency that we can hear and understand. So what Rick Rubin will say is that creatives have that antenna, and they just pick up on that frequency, and it comes through them, it streams through them. And I equate that to the transducer aspect that I again picked up from Dr. Joe Dispenza. That makes perfect sense, yo. That makes perfect sense that we attune ourselves to a certain frequency of this art, of this shit, and it flows through us, and boom, we just boom, write it down. So like there's that, you can call that channeling. I don't know, like call it whatever you want, you know, but I think that's another aspect of what it is. Whether that frequency you're attuning to is a whole nother consciousness that would make it channeling, or information that is out there from a bunch of consciousnesses or a bunch of learnings or whatnot, which like can be one and the same as I'm talking about it. Because something that Lee Harris was saying yesterday is that the Z's that he channels, Zachariah's, I forgot, they're all Z names, there's 3 and they're all Z names, is that recently they just decided, or no, since 2018 they decided to just be one instead of having them separate. So they're just the Z's now instead of like the individual Z's, so that because it's all the same message that they're all saying. And so like that, I see that as something too, that like instead of like you channeling one entity, one thing, it's, or like this song is not coming from one thing, one person, one entity. Maybe it's an amalgamation of a bunch of entities that are coming through here, or maybe it is just one. Like I don't know, it's whatever you want it to be at the end of the day. But I think how we're getting that information is this method, is through channeling or transducing. Call it one and the same, call it whatever you want. So that aspect is really cool to me, and I think like we do that so often without us knowing it, without us realizing it. The downloads that I get is channeling. The streams of consciousness that I hit when I sit and philosophize and I come up with these different theories and shit, is me channeling and like pulling this information down from collective consciousness, or not even pulling it down, collective consciousness that exists already within me. The information is there, I'm just remembering it. I'm just allowing myself to remember it, either through transducing it, through it coming in me and coming up here and boom, transducing it and it making sense, it clicking with other parts, other information, other knowledge, other wisdom I've gathered throughout my life, and reanalyzing it and seeing how it makes sense with another theory, and boom, it clicks and becomes a puzzle piece, you know? Yeah. It's super interesting, man. And this is why I'm doing this, because I need to get it out. Like I have these thoughts all the time. I have these downloads. I have these channels, and I don't have anywhere to put them other than my mind. And a lot of them still exist, but some of them are fading. And I got to this kind of thought process because I was listening to someone I love, Chantress Seba. I don't know if it's Seba or Seba, but she's really dope. And I think in one of her descriptions on YouTube, she had put like, I channeled this while sitting by the lake or something like that. I was like, oh shit, maybe that's what talent is, yo. It's not just, but it is a form of channeling. And so yeah, I started to analyze that more, and I would like think of these concepts. Like, why do I love space? Like, why do I love the cosmos? Why do I resonate with Star Trek and them being explorers and like wanting to travel the galaxy, the universe, and meet new civilizations? You know, like, what is that? I remember there was one point where I was so, maybe it was obsession, maybe it was infatuation, but I was so obsessed with the expanse and Star Trek that like when I would look up at the sky, I would get depressed. I was like, had a bout of depression for like a week or two because I felt a longing for space. When I would look up at the stars, like I would get so sad because it was like, I'll never get to do that. I'll never get to explore. It felt like I was connecting with a future me, like how we can connect with our past lives. I think we can also connect with our future lives or our future energy. I saw something about this the other day. It was an article of physicists being able to see that future events dictated the past. Like they were doing something with particles, electrons. They sent like 25 electrons or something like that, and it altered in the future, and so that changed it in the past, something like that. I'm going to reread that article and get someone. I used to watch a video about it, but it hurts my head when I think about it right now because I don't understand it and I need to understand it more. But anyway, seeing that article too is like another piece of the puzzle that's like, hey, there's something here. You know, the same thought and theory that you had 2-3 years ago when you were depressed, looking up at the stars, longing for this thing, and you develop the theory that you're tapping into a future life where you are an explorer and you are in space and you are meeting new physical civilizations. You know, that's it. Like, that's what you're doing again. And again, going back to how it looks different, how the stuff that I want to do as a child looks different now, is that like meeting new civilizations, new alien races, extraterrestrials is something that I've always wanted to fucking do. And like, there's the physical aspect of it, which is the way I've known and understand my life growing up. But now I understand the metaphysical aspect of it. And I believe I have connected with extraterrestrials, transdimensional extraterrestrials that Dr. Stephen Greer mentions. It was literally through his method how I contacted them. I did a CE5. That's literally how I got into meditation, which is so fucking ridiculous. But yeah. Yeah, so that spiritual inertia is pretty dope concept. The collective consciousness aspect, you know, I love all of that. I forgot what I was gonna move into next. Shoot, what time are we at here? 1:13. That's crazy. What time is it? Shit. Okay, I almost have to go. Damn. I want to keep going. I'm just thinking about how to even format this. Like, I don't know who's gonna watch this for a fucking hour, you know? Maybe I need to cut it up. I don't know, but whatever, we can figure that out later. There's a few things I guess I can touch on in other ones. I do like this though. This is pretty cool. I am fucking with it. There's a lot more I want to talk about, like the whole love aspect. There's a whole thing there. I have like all these lectures that I just want to like get out, you know. So now I'm just like mentally freestyling, rapping, talking, parts of it out. lot of theories, man. A lot of theories that I have that I'll be concocting and shit. But you know what? Okay, maybe that's it for today. I think there's more than enough here to get started with. Maybe I'll chop this. I don't know. I don't need to talk about this part, but yeah, yo, thank you for anyone that is watching this, watching this far, this much. Yeah, like, subscribe, comment, yo, talk to me. Because again, a lot of this stuff with Dune and whatnot, I don't have anyone to really talk about it with. So specifically Dune. The consciousness stuff, I have a few people in my life I can talk to about it, so that's pretty cool. But I'm open, you know. You got more to say. You want to add to the theory, you want to poke holes in it, you want to dissect it, destroy it, let's do it, baby. I'm a science-based individual, so I'm open to having things peer-reviewed and torn down and destroyed and all that kind of shit, so that we can rebuild it, make it make sense, you know. But yeah, yo, thanks for this. Peace.